Good morning, one and all. So, welcome back, students, to our live classes. And today we will be completing this very important chapter in costing. Yes, very good morning, Rajita, Vishal, Rajkumar, Nagarthana, Dharni, Mahalakshmi. Everybody, very good morning. So, we have been studying this topic since 2 sessions. We started with the conceptual part. We went into the detail, some very minute details, not only of this topic, but of costing in general, where we dived deep into the concepts of costing. And then in the previous lecture, we tried to understand everything from the practical perspective so that we could consolidate both our understandings, the conceptual one, and then combining it with the practical understanding. So again, before we proceed, let me take your questions, queries, so that I'll be understanding how much you have understood. Also, I have shared few of the answers for this particular chapter's questions. More I will be sharing in due course as I get it solved from someone at my end, so that you can have it as your reference. Yesterday I uploaded it, so you may check from there. Okay, let us proceed. Tell me your queries, students, in this whole topic, whatever we have studied. Yes, Mohammed, good morning. Okay, let me just then take you through the chapter once again, which will also be our revision. And then we can take ahead with what we started in the previous session so that it can be concluded. So basically, we are studying the subject of overheads. Overheads is what? Overheads is nothing but those expenses which are indirect. When I say indirect, it is made up of three components: material, indirect labor, indirect expense. Collectively, this is called as overheads. And then, for the purpose of better charging and better control, we further reclassified into production, administration, selling. So these are the overheads on the basis of the functions. Now, this is the practical part which we were doing. Now we come to accounting and procedures. Acha, as you remember, in all the three topics, material, labor, and overheads, you have to study the accounting part, the controlling part, and the charging part. Let me go back to the first conceptual topic. Yes. Now see, all this was accounting that we studied. Okay, how do you do accounting? For accounting, like your financial books, here also we have the main ledger, which is the cost ledger. And then we have subsidiary books. For material, it is stores ledger. For labor, it is labor register. And for overheads, it is the overheads register. Besides this subsidiary book, in the main ledger, you have the respective overheads account for each of the overheads separately. So you have production overheads control, administration overheads control, selling and distribution overheads control. Now, how accounting is done? In this subsidiary book, which is the overheads register, I will list down all the expenses. Now, from where do I get the expenses? I get it from my financial records. And this is also then maintained in your cost accounting records. So I'll list down all the expenses which are indirect. And then in this register, I have these three columns for each of the overheads. Now, what I have to simply do is all these expenses which I am incurring, I will identify the total amounts that I am incurring. This you obviously get from your journal entries. And from these total accounts, this is total amount of, let us say, indirect material. This is total amount of, let us say, salary. This is total amount of advertisement. Now I try to find out the respective amounts for each of these overheads. How? If any expense is specific, like advertisement is only for S&D, it is only for selling distribution, I'll put it here. If expenses are common like salary, which is for all the departments, I will distribute it, I will divide it in all the departments. And whenever I'm dividing, I need a ratio. Similarly, indirect material, these are the material used in factory, generally for non-production purposes. I will put it only in production overheads. But if it covers all other materials used in other departments also, again, I will divide it using some appropriate ratio. So basically what I do is, I will prepare this overheads register in which I will be writing down all the expenses which are indirect and then dividing it between all these three columns so that I get the respective figures of overheads. So I get production overheads, I'll get administration overheads, I'll get selling and distribution overheads. And these are the figures which then gets recorded in my overheads accounts. So this is how accounting is done. Now, I will touch upon one important theory question which was asked by one of you all in the previous lectures, but I said that I'll explain that later. So now that stage has come. As you can see in this particular register, when I am recording these expenses in respective columns of the overheads, I have to use some basis, some ratio by which I can divide the expenses between all the departments, all the overheads columns, so that I can get the total overheads. Now, these ratios which I'm using for dividing these expenses between all the overheads is what is called as standing orders. So this is a 1-mark theory question. What is standing order? So as you can see, overhead, that is all these expenses which are indirect, will be analyzed into the 3 overheads columns in the overheads register. And how this is done? It is done using some predetermined ratio, which is also called as basis. These ratios or basis, which you are using to divide the overheads between all the overheads column, is what is called as the standing orders. Correct? Then we come to another theory point, how overheads are controlled. Again, this was particularly asked by one of you in the previous, I think the first session of overheads, because somebody said that if overheads are fixed, how can they be controlled? Understand one thing. See, when we say control, control does not only means reduction. Many times we mix between control and reduction. So control does not only means reduction of cost. Control means maintaining the cost within reasonable limits. Now, even fixed cost can be controlled. How? If it is a fixed cost, fine, but we have to also ensure that there is not cost overruns. That is, it should not happen that the fixed cost exceeds the limits which are set. So how do we control? As I now just use the word, I have to ensure that it does not exceed the limits. So firstly, I will set the limits for each of these overheads. And then I will keep on monitoring this by comparing these limits with the actuals. See, this is one of the most common and the most effective ways of controlling, whereby in day-to-day business, you keep on monitoring your expenses. Even in our families, mom and dad does the same thing. In order to ensure that our expenses are not over budget, they keep on monitoring the expenses on regular basis. And how do they monitor? They fix a limit for each expense. So we will fix a limit, like in case of factory, for my production, for my administration, for my selling. Anyways, these are indirect, so they may also not vary exactly in ratio of your output. So we will fix up a limit what we believe should be the appropriate amount to spend. And then we will keep on comparing these limits what we have fixed with the actual expenses as and when they are incurred, so that we can ensure that there are no cost overruns. In case we find that some cost is getting exceeded, then we will immediately take action. We'll try to do some investigation why it is happening, and wherever correction is required, we'll correct it. Now, what is the theory point in this? Our module has only one small paragraph written on the control part of overheads. Otherwise, our module entirely in overheads is dealing with the practical part, which we have started solving. Now, these limits are set either by looking at past year's expenses or from the budgets that we have prepared for this year, or these limits can be taken by fixing up some standards. So the question is, when you want to compare actual with limits, you need to find out the limits, or you need to set the limits with which you can compare the actual. How will these limits be set? It can be set using the past expense data. In case of administration, module says you can even compare your actuals with the performance, but I believe more than this, the past expense data can be used. Or simply for each of these overheads, now we are all preparing the budgets. So the budgets that we are preparing, that itself will become the limits. So these budgets will keep on comparing with the actual every month on month to ensure that the expenses remain within the limits. And then another option is, wherever possible, we can even set standards. So these are how limits would be set for each of the overheads, and we keep on comparing with actuals as and when they are incurred to ensure that it remains within limit. Once we are able to achieve this, controlling will happen. Then the third part is charging these overheads. Now we all know in costing, the mother formula for finding out the per unit cost or the amount that you will charge is by this mother formula. Numerator, it is total cost minus scrap value of normal loss. Denominator, it is total quantity minus normal loss units. Now, since these are expenses, there will be no chance of there being any scrap value, because scrap value will be there only for material losses. For labor and for other expenses like overheads, there can be no scrap value because these are all expenses only. There is nothing like material which you can sell in scrap. So numerator will be now only overheads, and denominator will be whatever base you select, total quantity of that base minus normal loss. This is the mother formula, which is also used for finding out material charging price, labor charging rate, overhead charging rate. And this is also used wherever you are doing costing to find out the per unit final cost or price. Now, this charging rate for overheads is also called as overhead charging rate, overhead recovery rate, overhead absorption rate. We commonly use this terminology. So in short, it is called as ORR. This ORR is calculated at the start of the year on estimated basis, so that I find out this rate to be used to charge throughout the year. And this estimate is found out right now in the month of March when we are preparing the budgets. Again, how? Same. So this overhead register, which we are going to prepare as our routine accounting part, is again used right now at the time of budgeting. We will estimate all these expenses for the year. We are already estimating while preparing budgets. So we prepare this overhead register on a budgeted basis to find out my total budgeted or estimated overheads. And then these budgeted or estimated overheads will be used for finding out the overhead charging rate at the start of the year by again the same formula: numerator budgeted overheads, denominator the budgeted base. Correct? Now, for administration and selling, we will find out single rate of charging. For production, we are having two options, two approaches. Either you can find out single charging rate, or you can find out department-wise rate, which is called as departmental rate. Now, same thing is in the theory also. So you will find out the overhead charging rate first. And for finding out this overhead charging rate, you require a base. What could be the base? So the basis could be, as you saw, we studied this for selling distribution. Either you can take units sold if you want to find out per unit, or you can find it out as a percentage of sales. For administration, either you can find out per unit of your production, or you can find it out as a percentage of factory cost. And in then production, you are given two approaches: single rate, which is also called as blanket rate, or departmental rate, how that we will study in the steps below. Here there is one more important theory point, that is, what is the treatment of administration overheads? Means, treatment means what you do of administration overheads in costing. So one option is charge to product, like how we are charging the other overheads. First option is you charge it to product, and for charging it to product, you have to find out the charging rate, which is ORR. For this, these are the two optional bases. Alternatively, instead of charging it to product, we can directly charge or transfer it to P&L. That is where we are not charging it to product. Whenever you transfer any expense to P&L and you do not charge it to product, that expense is called as period cost. So the expense which you are charging to product is called as product cost. Those expense which you do not charge to product, directly transfer to P&L, is called as period cost. So one option is this, charge to product by finding out the ORR. Second option is this, do not charge to product, transfer it to P&L. Third option is this. This you find in cost sheet also, if you remember, that administration is given in two things: administration related to production, administration related to selling or general. So you find in cost sheet format that administration is given as administration related to production, so you write it after factory cost. If it is given administration general, you write it with selling and distribution overheads, because then it deals with administration relating to selling. So this is another approach where you charge it to the product by first dividing it between production related administration and selling related administration. So this is an important theory question relating to charging. Now we come to production overheads, which is the main syllabus of practical, where again there are two approaches: blanket rate or departmental rate. If you find out blanket rate, it means you'll find out one single rate. And for this one single rate, again, you have two options. Either the base can be some physical base like machine hours, labor hours, etc. Or if you want to find out it as a percentage, generally the base is uses amount of direct wages. So you can calculate it as a percentage of direct wages. But this is when you find out single rate. But many times it is seen that for production overheads, for better charging, you find out department-wise rate. And when you want to find out department-wise rate, how it is done? For that, we do this working, which we studied in the previous lecture practically. We prepare a production overhead summary. This production overhead summary is prepared, or you can say solving is done in this format, that particulars, amount of expense, basis of apportionment, then production related departments, service related departments. In this, whatever are your expenses, which we found out in our first working, that is overheads register, same expenses I will take over here. I will take only the amount pertaining to production department. Now this amount of expense, I will now divide between all my production departments. So first step is dividing all these expenses between your production and service departments. This step is called as primary distribution. In primary distribution, few expenses would be simply put in the respective department columns because you know them separately. That is what is called as allocation. Few expenses which are common, you have to divide it between all the departments using some ratio. This is called as apportionment. So primary distribution is done in two ways: allocation, apportionment. By doing this step, all your expenses will now get divided between Department A, Department B, Department C, Department X, Department Y. And now XY expenses are redistributed to your production departments, which is called as redistribution of overheads or secondary distribution of overheads. At the end of this step, expenses of X and Y have become zero because you have divided it. And now you only get expense of Department A, B, C, which are your production department. This whole procedure by which you divide the expenses between your departments is also called as theoretically, this step whereby I divided my overheads between all my departments is termed as departmentalization of overheads, in which we first do primary and then we do secondary. And at the end of this, I will now find, or I will get the overheads of each production department. Then I will divide it by a proper suitable base. Same other formula, total overheads in the numerator divided by base. I will get the ORR for each department separately. This approach is called as the departmental approach, whereby now you find out overhead charging rate separately department wise. So here there is no single rate, there are department wise separate rates. This is what is also given in the theory. So for production overheads, now when we study the departmental rate approach in detail, the approach says first estimate your overheads. This is the first step. Estimate overheads and then divide it between production, administration, selling in the overheads register format. Now only take the production overheads amount, because these you are going to charge using the respective basis, and you will find out the ORR for administration and for selling. Now for production overheads, one approach was find out a single rate. But if I want to find out departmental rate, what is the next step? So whatever production overheads you have estimated, now start departmentalizing it. What is departmentalizing? Divide these expenses between your departments. So first step is primary, second step is secondary. In primary, allocation, apportionment, two methods. Then at the end of secondary distribution, what will happen? You will get total of only production departments ABC. Now divide it by suitable base so that you get the overhead recovery or charging rate. If you have found out a single rate without departmentalization, it will be called a single or blanket rate. Or if you have done all these steps, what you find out is your departmental rate. So whatever practical we solved in the previous class, that is up to this step. So this is the theory version of the practical part. So in case you get a theory question, what is the steps for charging production overheads? You know what are these steps. That is what we do in practical. You get a theory question, what is standing orders? So as I explained at the start, standing orders is the ratio in which you have divided the expenses between the three overheads. Or you may get a theory question on what is allocation, what is apportionment, what is departmentalization of overheads, or what is departmental rate versus blanket rate. These are all the theory questions. Now here, you have found out ORR, either single or department wise. Now, once you have found out ORR, when the year will start? Now my financial year starts, I start doing actual production, and on the actual production, now I start charging the overheads using this ORR. So as the production will happen, I'll start preparing cost sheet, and in cost sheet, now I'll start charging these overheads. And then at the end of the year, we have to do this. What is this? That is what we are going to study today practically. So this is the whole theory aspect of whatever we studied. Plus, we have already done the practical part of this. So we will take ahead the practical from here to the next step and to the next practical category. Let me see if you have any questions. Priyanka, font, I agree it is not clear because after writing too many things, the font appear very thin. Okay. So this we understood in the previous class. We studied all this conceptual part practically, and that practical now I've converted into theory. So that concept, practical, theory, same thing we have repeated 3 times in all the 3 classes. So I'm sure now it is consolidated in your minds. So this is the primary distribution which we studied. I hope you all remember this. So primary distribution, at the end, you will get the overhead figures for each department separately. Correct. After primary, you have to do secondary, for which there are these 3 different possibilities. In a real world scenario, one of these 3 exists, and whatever exists, accordingly, you select a method. So where service departments are not providing services to service departments, they are only providing to production department, the method is called as direct. When one of the service department is giving service to another, but not reciprocally, it is called as step ladder. And both these are collectively called as non-reciprocal because they are not giving to one another. Another approach is reciprocal, where both are giving to one another. And in this, then you have the repeated distribution method or the simultaneous method. Repeated is also error, right? Then we studied the secondary distribution. So secondary distribution, so yes, I'll repeat this in Hindi. So प्राइमरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन पहला स्टेप था जिसमें हमने हमारे सारे खर्चों को, जो भी ओवरहेड्स है, हमारे डिपार्टमेंट्स में डिवाइड कर दिया। अब कुछ खर्चों को हमने कैसे डिवाइड किया? सीधे उठा के उनको उनके कॉलम में लिख दिया, क्योंकि वो ऑलरेडी सम में वैसे ही दिए थे। जब आप कोई भी खर्चे को पहले से डिवाइड किया हुआ है आपके पास सम में, और उसे आप उसके रिस्पेक्टिव कॉलम में लिखते हो, दैट इज थियोरेटिकली कॉल्ड एज अलोकेशन। और जो खर्चे आपको टोटल दिए थे, कॉमन दिए थे, जिसे आपने कोई रेशियो यूज करके डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया सारे डिपार्टमेंट्स में, दिस इज कॉल्ड एज अपॉर्शन। ये करके आपको आपके ओवरहेड्स की टोटल कॉस्ट मिल गई डिपार्टमेंट वाइज ABC XY। फिर आपको करना है सेकेंडरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, इनमें से किसी भी एक मेथड से जो आपको एप्लीकेबल है या जो सम में पूछा है। एंड देन सेम फॉर्मेट ऑफ प्राइमरी इज कंटिन्यूड इन सेकेंडरी। सो फॉर्मेट वही है क्योंकि सम वही है। आप इसको सेकेंडरी में सिंपली क्या करोगे, जो एक्स और वाई का आपको खर्चा मिला इधर प्राइमरी में, यहाँ पे आपने जो एक्स और वाई का खर्चा निकाला, अब उसे आपको डिवाइड करना है उन डिपार्टमेंट्स को जिसको एक्स और वाई ने सर्व किया है। सो फर्स्ट पॉसिबिलिटी, एक्स और वाई ने सिर्फ प्रोडक्शन को सर्व किया है, तो उन्होंने एक दूसरे को कुछ भी चार्ज नहीं किया। सेकेंड पॉसिबिलिटी, एक्स ने वाई को सर्व किया है मगर वाई ने एक्स को सर्व नहीं किया है, तो सिर्फ हमने एक्स का वाई को चार्ज किया, वाई का एक्स को नहीं किया। एंड थर्ड पॉसिबिलिटी, दोनों एक दूसरे को सर्विस दे रहे, तो एक्स वाई को भी दे रहा है, वाई एक्स को भी दे रहा है। अब जब दोनों एक दूसरे को सर्विस दे रहे, विच इज रेसिप्रोकल, ये करने का दो तरीका है। आप रिपीटेड से करो, जिससे मैं कहता हूं हमाली मेथड। हमाली मीन्स आपको काम बार 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 करना है, इसलिए इट इज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड एज रिपीटेड मेथड। ये आपको कब तक करना है? जब तक आपके किसी भी सर्विस डिपार्टमेंट का अमाउंट इतना छोटा ना हो जाए कि उसके बाद डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिर्फ सिंगल डिजिट होगा। जब वो सिंगल डिजिट पे आने वाला है, तो यहाँ पे अब आप सिर्फ प्रोडक्शन को दोगे, वापस दूसरे सर्विस डिपार्टमेंट को नहीं दोगे, क्योंकि आपने इधर दूसरे सर्विस डिपार्टमेंट को नहीं दिया। तो यहाँ पे आके आपका ये प्रोसेस खत्म हो जाता है एंड यू गेट द ओवरहेड कॉस्ट ऑफ ईच डिपार्टमेंट। इसी को हम कमाली मेथड से कर सकते हैं। कमाल है ये मेथड। क्यों कमाल है ये मेथड? हमें सेम आंसर मिलता है सिंगल स्टेप में, दैट इज व्हाई दिस इज कमाली मेथड, which is based on simple mathematics of simultaneous equation, जहां पे हम ये इक्वेशन बनाएंगे कि x का टोटल खर्चा कितना है, खुद का जो उसका खर्चा था, प्लस उसको जो y से मिलेगा। y का टोटल खर्चा कितना है, उसका जो खुद का खर्चा था, प्लस उसको जो x से मिलेगा। और फिर इसे सॉल्व कैसे करना है? ये x का इक्वेशन ही लिया मैंने, और इसमें जहां पे y था, y की जगह मैंने y का इक्वेशन सब्सटीट्यूट कर दिया। अब इसको जब मैं सॉल्व करूंगा, आई विल गेट द टोटल कॉस्ट ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट एक्स। ये आ गई 9796। तो आप देख सकते हैं एक्स का खुद का कॉस्ट था 9000 ओरिजिनली, जो हमने इधर इक्वेशन में भी लिखा था, पर वाई का शेयर मिला के उसका टोटल कॉस्ट कितना बन गया? 9796। सो अब इस साइमल्टेनियस इक्वेशन वाले मेथड में भले एक्स का खुद का कॉस्ट 9000 है, हम डिवाइड करते हैं 9796। नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस, क्योंकि हमने ज्यादा डिवाइड किया है, आफ्टर दिस डिवीजन एक्स का जो अमाउंट है दैट बिकम्स नेगेटिव, एंड वॉट एवर अमाउंट आई गेट फॉर वाई, वो अमाउंट अब मैं जब डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करूंगा सब में, एक्स को एग्जैक्टली उतना मिलेगा जितना नेगेटिव हुआ था। सो एक ही स्टेप में क्या हो गया, ये दोनों नील हो गए, एंड आई गेट द टोटल कॉस्ट ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट ABC, विच आर माई प्रोडक्शन डिपार्टमेंट्स। So this is what is primary, secondary. अब इसके बाद का अगला स्टेप क्या है? अगला स्टेप है फाइंडिंग ORR, जिसे हम बोलते हैं ओवरहेड रिकवरी रेट या चार्जिंग रेट, जो सिंपल है। आपको ये जो ओवरहेड्स मिला है, आपको इसको डिवाइड करना है इसके बेस से। सो वी ऑल नो ORR is by this formula, numerator estimated overheads, denominator we divided by the base. अब सवाल आता है बेस क्या लेना है? So now we are talking about production overheads के basis. तो प्राइमरी हो गया, सेकेंडरी हो गया, सेकेंडरी में हमें प्रोडक्शन डिपार्टमेंट्स के टोटल मिल गए। अब इस टोटल को वी हैव टू डिवाइड बाय सम बेस। क्या होंगे बेस? दैट इज व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू स्टडी। जस्ट गिव मी अ मिनट, देयर इज सम problem with my net connection. Just give me a minute, I'll change the connection. Student, today we have a power failure since night. So I'm completely connected with mobile data. So in case if you find any challenge in my voice or something, please let me know. I'll switch off the video. राजकुमार बेटा, मैंने अभी पूरा हिंदी में एक्सप्लेन किया है। ऑलरेडी पवन हैड रिक्वेस्टेड, सो मैंने पूरा हिंदी में किया अभी, डोंट वरी। सो स्टूडेंट जस्ट लेट मी नो अगर बीच में कहीं पे भी आपको अगर लगता है कि आवाज नहीं आई या कुछ नहीं, नेट इशू हुआ, आई विल स्विच ऑफ द वीडियो बिकॉज बेटा explain English means what? I have explained everything in English only, and after that I repeated the same in Hindi, right? Fine. So let me take ahead. We have only some part left in this topic. Let us complete that. So now I'm explaining you what would be the base. Now base for what? Base for production overheads. Now what I'm trying to explain, please understand. See, I'll take you to the conceptual sheet again. This was our conceptual sheet where when I explained you the charging part, if you remember, I had explained that for administration overheads, generally there are two suitable bases. This we saw in the theory also. One is the production units, or if you want a cost as the base, the factory cost would be the base. Similarly, for selling and distribution, if you want units, sale units could be the base. If you want amount, sales value could be the amount. Similarly, now these were the bases for administration overheads. Now, similarly for production overheads, what should be or what could be the most appropriate base? This is what I'm explaining. So this is practical plus theory. Now understand one thing, there are always two types of basis, physical or cost. In physical, you generally take the production quantity or some units, like for administration, we took production quantity, for selling, we took sales quantity. Now, since this is production overheads, if you want to take quantity, it should be production quantity only because we are discussing or we are charging production. However, generally, units base is not considered as a very appropriate base. More appropriate is the hours. Hours means either the labor hours or the machine hours. What is this labor hours or machine hours? Simply, if you have to do the production, for doing production, where workers are doing the production, it means your production is more dependent on the labor. We take the labor hours, that is the time required for doing this production. If your production is mechanized and majorly it is done by machines and labor are only doing the supporting work of starting the machine, stopping the machine, or just watching whether the machine is operating properly or not, it becomes the mechanized production. So there you will take the machine hours. So for finding out overhead recovery rate for production overheads, if you want to take the physical base, more appropriate basis is this. And this is now what you will understand in the form of a practical sum also. Instead of this, if you want to take cost base, the most suitable base recommended is direct labor cost. So the most suitable base, if you want to take cost as the base, should be direct labor cost. Now, we understand this part where we will understand how to calculate this base. I'm using the word again, how to calculate this base. Now again, please understand the entire link. What is the link? आपने पहले प्राइमरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन किया, सो आपको प्राइमरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन से टोटल ओवरहेड्स मिल गए एबीसी एक्स वाई की. फिर आपने सेकेंडरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन किया, सेकेंडरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन में एक्स वाई डिवाइड होके एबीसी में डिवाइड हो गया, सो एक्स वाई निल हो गया. नाउ यू हैव ओनली एबीसी. नाउ अब आपको इस एबीसी को डिवाइड करना है उसके सूटेबल बेस से. जब आप इस खर्चे को बेस से डिवाइड करोगे तो आपको ओआरआर मिलेगा ए का. आप इस खर्चे को इसके बेस से डिवाइड करोगे, आपको ओआरआर मिलेगा बी का, और आपको इधर ओआरआर मिलेगा सी का. दैट इज यू विल गेट द डिपार्टमेंटल overhead recovery rate separately. Now, as I explained, what could be the basis? The basis could be units, basis could be hours, but what is more suitable or what is suggested is for production overheads, the basis should be suitably hours. In hours, you can take labor hours, in hours, you can take machine hours, depending upon whether your work is mechanized or whether your work is labor driven. Now, I am taking machine as the base, so I'm assuming that my work is machine driven or it is mechanized. So now what we are going to solve is machine hour rate sums. What is machine hour rate sums? Where my production department is mechanized department, and since it is a mechanized department, I am using machines for doing the production. Now, when I'm using machines for doing the production, my base would be machine hours. And with this as the base, now I have to find out overhead charging rate or overhead recovery rate. How we find out that is what is my next category of sums, which is called as machine hour rate sums. Now, machine hour rate sums is very simple, and again in case of machine hour rate, you will find that like the previous two category of questions, primary distribution, secondary distribution, this machine hour rate, which is a third category of sum, is fully mechanical. The steps are fixed, the format is fixed, hence it is very, very, very scoring, right? So I will take one of these sums. I'll take the sum which is the most lengthiest so that we can cover maximum adjustment. Okay, so I'll take 17 sum. I'll just read the main question first. You are required to compute the machine hour rate for charging of your cost of the machine. In short, they are asking you to find out ORR, for this particular production department, which is a mechanized department. Now, let us understand the question. What does the question say? There is a manufacturing unit which has now recently purchased a new machine. And this machine is the sixth machine because they already have five machines. So now the total number of machines have become six. Now, the total cost of purchasing and installing this new machine comes to rupees 7,50,000. Estimated life of machine is 15 years and the expected scrap value is 30,000. Now, we all know this data we are very accustomed with because this is the data which we use whenever in accounts you are solving depreciation sums. Yes, Gauri beta, you have this in your module also. In the module also, this is called as machine hour rate sums. So whatever I'm explaining, or everything is part of your module. Now, so understand this. This data will help you calculate the depreciation of the machine. Now, what they are saying, your budgeted working hours, that is the expected working hours, is 2,400. So, like how I am mentioning since two sessions that right now in March we prepare our budgets. So right now we are budgeting. One, we do budgeting of all our expenses, which becomes the expenses or the cost budget. On the basis of cost budget, we calculated the overheads. Now, we also budget how much production we'll be doing. We also budget how many hours we will be working in the next year. So this is the budget of my hours. Now, how I have budgeted this hours, understand this practically. When I'm sitting to prepare the budget for the next year, I'll take the calendar of the next year. And the calendar will help me identify how many days would be a holiday. So we all know a year is of 365 days, correct? However, in 365, one of the days is your weekly off. So let us say it is Sunday. So in the entire year, all Sundays are out. Then in the working days which are left, which is Monday to Saturday, on certain days, you will be compulsorily closing down the factory or keeping the factory closed. Why? Because it is some declared holiday, like our Independence Day holiday, like maybe Ramzan Eid holiday, like maybe Diwali or Holi holiday, or maybe a New Year or the Christmas Eve holiday. So whatever are the declared holidays, you will be keeping the factory closed, and that is how you estimate or budget how many hours the factory would be running so that you get your estimated hours. See, this is the hours for which the workers are working. This is the hours for which the machines are running. So let us say after adjusting the holidays from this, I found out that my working days in the coming financial year would be 300. Now I work in a day for one shift. One shift is of 8 hours. So 300 into 8, this is how I got 2,400. Now, if I feel that this 2,400 is not sufficient because my production is more and I need more hours, then I will add overtime to this. That is, I will plan in my budget only that on certain days I will be working overtime because let us say I want 2,700 hours. So maybe in any other sum, you may also be given more number of hours, like 300 days into 8 comes to 2,400. But if I want to work more, how I will work more? By working overtime on certain days. So in that particular case, my budgeted working hours would be 2,700. Example I'm giving because you may have different types of questions given in the exams. Now, here this is not given, so we are not going to work overtime. So my budgeted hours in the next year would be 2,400. Now, most important students, please pay attention. No factory or no business place, even if it is open for 8 hours, that is their shift is of 8 hours, they cannot continuously do production. Why? Like if you talk about our office, in our office, even though our office timings are, let us say, morning 10 to evening 6, which is the standard timing, which is again 8 hours a day, we will not be doing working continuously for 8 hours because we need to give breaks. These breaks, if you remember our labor chapter, are called as idle time. Similarly, when you're doing production in a factory, again, there would be some idle time. First idle time would be when the worker comes to the production area, he will put on all the machines. There will be some time which is gone in making the machine ready for the work. This is called as the setup time. So you will have some hours which are idle, which will be set up. In this question, it is not given, but let us say you are given setup hours which will be lost will be 100 hours. So 100 hours you will be losing in the year. Why? Because that is the initial time required. Once the worker comes to the factory, immediately production never starts. He will have to start the machines. The machine may take some time to warm up, get ready. He will be cleaning the machines. He will be fitting the dies to the machines. This is making the machine ready for the production, which is called as setting up. So some hours will be lost, will be my normal idle time because of machine setup. Further, some hours would be lost in between because I cannot keep the machine working always. I have to also plan its maintenance so that the machine remains in a good condition. So whenever I will stop the machine for maintenance, again, those hours would be lost. So let us say in the question here, see, you can see they have given that this total working hours includes some hours which will be lost for maintenance. Now, why this is important? Because again, I go to the logical part. See, whenever we calculate this, one second, not here. Just show you something so that you can understand conceptually also. See here, when I was explaining charging, I said the mother formula for charging is numerator is the cost minus scrap value of normal loss, which is not here because there can be no scrap value because we are talking about overheads, which is an expense. But in denominator, it is always the total quantity of that base minus normal loss. Now here, this maintenance time, this setup time is my normal loss. So when I'm finding out ORR in the denominator, 2400 is the total hours for which my factory will be open. However, some hours will be lost, which is my normal loss. And here, in case of machines, it is the setup time and the maintenance time, which in my example is given as 400 for maintenance. I assume further 100 if it is given, which is for setup. So please understand, students, I'm trying to again repeat the same thing again and again. That is the mother formula. Fine, coming back. Yes. So this data will help me find out my denominator, that is finding out the base, which is my machine hours. And then from here, all expenses are given, which I will make a total to find out my total overhead. So students, हमें मशीन आवर रेट फाइंड आउट करना है. ये आपके तीसरे टाइप का सम है जो आपको आता है, जिसे हम बोलते हैं मशीन आवर रेट सम्स. मशीन आवर रेट मतलब आप जो ओवरहेड रिकवरी रेट निकालते हो आपके प्रोडक्शन ओवरहेड्स का, उसे ही मशीन आवर रेट कहते हैं, क्योंकि आप डिवाइड करते हो मशीन आवर से. ये आप मशीन आवर से भी डिवाइड कर सकते हो, लेबर आवर से भी कर सकते हो, डिपेंडिंग अपॉन आपका प्रोडक्शन मैकेनाइज्ड है या लेबर ड्रिवन. इसका जो सम आता है वो एग्जैक्टली एग्जाम में इसी तरीके से आता है जैसा आप स्क्रीन पे देख रहे हो, जहां पे आपको सिर्फ एक नई बात बताई जा रही जो अब तक नहीं बताई गई थी, दैट इज कैलकुलेशन ऑफ मशीन आवर्स. तो जो हम डिवाइड करेंगे मशीन आवर्स, वो मशीन आवर्स कैसे कैलकुलेट होंगे उसका डेटा यहाँ पे दिया है. बाकी जो सारा डेटा है, जैसे यहाँ पे आपको डेप्रिसिएशन का डेटा है, यहाँ पे बाकी सारे कॉस्ट का डेटा है, दैट इज गिवन इन द क्वेश्चन. नाउ व्हाट इज माय फॉर्मेट फॉर फाइंडिंग आउट दिस? सो हम क्या कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं स्टूडेंट्स? वी आर कैलकुलेटिंग द फाइनल थिंग इन ओवरहेड चार्जिंग, दैट इज द ओआरआर. हमने न्यूमरेटर फाइंड आउट कर लिया है. न्यूमरेटर क्या था? एस्टिमेटेड ओवरहेड्स. ये हमारा प्राइमरी और सेकेंडरी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन से आ गया. अब हमें बेस चाहिए. बेस दो प्रकार के हो सकते हैं, फिजिकल या कॉस्ट. कॉस्ट अगर आप बेस ले रहे हो तो प्रोडक्शन ओवरहेड्स के लिए रिकमेंडेड है कि आप डायरेक्ट लेबर कॉस्ट ले लो बेस में. अगर आपको फिजिकल बेस लेना है तो एक आप ले सकते हो यूनिट्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, जो रिकमेंडेड नहीं है। रिकमेंडेड इज यू कैन टेक द आवर्स, जो आपका टाइम लगेगा प्रोडक्शन करने में, लेबर आवर्स या मशीन आवर्स। इसमें भी सम्स आते हैं, मशीन आवर्स बेस है ये अजम्पशन से। इन्हीं सम्स को हम बोलते हैं मशीन आवर रेट सम्स। हाउ डू यू सॉल्व दीज सम्स? सबसे पहले, जैसे हमने ऊपर ओवरहेड्स का समरी बनाया, तो मैं यहाँ पे जिस भी डिपार्टमेंट का आपको ओआरआर निकालना है, मैं उस डिपार्टमेंट का स्टेटमेंट ऑफ कॉस्ट ये प्रिपेयर करूंगा। स्टेटमेंट ऑफ कॉस्ट से मुझे क्या मिलेगा? उस डिपार्टमेंट का टोटल ओवरहेड्स। तो सिंपल फॉर्मेट इज पर्टिकुलर्स एंड अमाउंट रुपीस। इसके अलावा मुझे दूसरा जो वर्किंग करना है, दैट इज फॉर कैलकुलेशन ऑफ नॉर्मल प्रोडक्टिव मशीन आवर्स। अब ये जो नॉर्मल प्रोडक्टिव मशीन आवर्स है, इसका फॉर्मेट फिक्स है। टोटल मशीन आवर्स अवेलेबल कितने हैं हमारे सामने? 2400 टोटल मशीन आवर्स अवेलेबल, माइनस जो हमारा नॉर्मल लॉस है। व्हाट इज द नॉर्मल लॉस इन केस ऑफ मशीन्स? एक, जैसा मैंने कहा, इट कुड बी सेटअप टाइम, दूसरा मेंटेनेंस टाइम। सो इट इज द सेटअप एंड मेंटेनेंस। ये वो टाइम है जो आपका लॉस होगा और जिससे आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते, जो सम में दिया है 400। सो इतने आवर्स अवेलेबल है, इतने मेरे लॉस होंगे, तो जो बचेगा वो क्या है? मेरा नॉर्मल प्रोडक्टिव मशीन आवर्स। ये बनेगा मेरा बेस डिवाइड करने वाला। इन अदर वर्ड्स, in the coming year, I am expected to work, my productive hours would be 2000 hours. अब एक बार ये मैंने फाइंड आउट कर लिया, ये हो गया मेरा डिनोमिनेटर ओआरआर के फॉर्मूले में। नाउ आई नीड टू फाइंड आउट द न्यूमरेटर, विच इज द टोटल ओवरहेड्स या टोटल कॉस्ट, जिसके लिए मैं सिंपली स्टेटमेंट ऑफ कॉस्ट बना रहा हूं। अब स्टेटमेंट ऑफ कॉस्ट का फॉर्मेट क्या है? अगर सम में बोला है कि फाइंड आउट फिक्स्ड एंड वेरिएबल सेपरेटली, तो आप फिक्स और वेरिएबल इस तरीके से सेपरेट करके बनाइए। नहीं बोला है, सो डोंट वेस्ट टाइम इन मेकिंग द बाइफरकेशन ऑफ फिक्स एंड वेरिएबल। सिंपली एड अप ऑल द कॉस्ट गिवन इन द क्वेश्चन। नाउ इन दिस सम दे हैव नॉट आस्क्ड यू टू डू द बाइफरकेशन ऑफ फिक्स एंड वेरिएबल, बट जस्ट फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग मैं आपको फिक्स और वेरिएबल वाले बाइफरकेशन से एक्सप्लेन करूंगा, सो दैट यू इवन अंडरस्टैंड कि अगर फिक्स वेरिएबल पूछा है तो वो कैसे रहेगा। नाउ सी, द फर्स्ट cost or the data is relating to depreciation. Depreciation, we all know how to calculate. Cost of that machine minus scrap value upon the life. Acha, most important point, this department, yeah, this manufacturing unit is having total 6 machines, right? 5 already थे और ये नया मशीन अभी हमने खरीदा है. Now, when we are calculating this machine hour rate, please remember कुछ चीजों का ध्यान देना है. व्हाट इज दैट? कि या तो आपका न्यूमरेटर में जो ऊपर टोटल ओवरहेड्स आएगा वो भी 6 मशीन्स का कॉस्ट होना चाहिए, और डिनोमिनेटर में जो मशीन आवर्स है वो भी 6 मशीन्स के मशीन आवर्स होंगे। तो लॉजिकली आप डिवाइड करोगे, यू विल गेट ओआरआर। और या तो दोनों जगह पे न्यूमरेटर और डिनोमिनेटर में यू विल टेक वन मशीन, यानी न्यूमरेटर में कॉस्ट भी 1 मशीन का, डिनोमिनेटर में मशीन आवर्स भी 1 मशीन के। सो दिस यू हैव टू कीप इन माइंड कि या तो न्यूमरेटर डिनोमिनेटर दोनों 6 मशीन्स का हो, कॉस्ट भी और आर्स भी, या न्यूमरेटर डिनोमिनेटर दोनों 1 मशीन का हो, कॉस्ट भी और आर्स भी। सो यहाँ पे वी आर जस्ट going to do the same thing, but keep this in mind that you have to maintain the same at both the levels, numerator में भी, denominator में भी. What is that? So here you will do it for one machine. So numerator also cost will take for 1 machine, denominator also Rs will take for 1 machine. So I'll first find out the depreciation. Now all this is for 1 machine. ये एक machine का ही data दिया है and depreciation is fixed. So I will consider it here. How I'll find depreciation? We know 750 is the cost of the machine minus 30,000, which is the scrap value. 15 years is the life. So remember, when I'm preparing this cost statement is for one machine and my cost is per annum. So ये just ध्यान में रहे, इसलिए मैंने यहाँ पे लिखा है. चलो, टेल मी कितना आ रहा है depreciation आपका यहाँ पे? How much depreciation you are getting? 48,000. Great. Now we go to the next cost. What is the next cost? Power या electricity. कितना power use हो रहा है? The machine for running require 15 units of electricity per hour. और इसका प्राइस क्या है? ₹8 per unit. So 1 घंटे जब मशीन चलेगा तो 15 यूनिट्स ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंज्यूम करेगा. पर यूनिट यू पे ₹8. Most important, electricity is not required when the machine is under maintenance, that we know. ये जो सेटअप और मेंटेनेंस है इसको इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नहीं लगेगा. अब ये जो मैंने आर्स निकाले, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. Now see, electricity is variable because the more you do production, more it will be required. Now you are going to actually run the machine for 2000 hours. ये अभी हमने कैलकुलेट किया. Into per hour कितना यूनिट्स लगने वाला है? 15. So 2000 hours we will work, per hour 15 units, and per unit cost is 8. So when I multiply this whole thing, I'll get my total electricity or the power cost. कितना आ रहा है? Now next toss. The machine requires a special oil for heating. So machine चलाने के लिए आपको कोई ऑयल डालना है जिससे कि मशीन रन करेगा, हीटिंग होगा मशीन का. This requires to be replaced once every month and the cost is 2,500 on every occasion. So oil 2,500 और वो मंथली है तो इंटू 12. करेक्ट. सिमिलरली मेंटेनेंस कॉस्ट कितना है? 500 पर वीक ऑफ 6 वर्किंग डेज. नाउ दिस इज इंटरेस्टिंग. आपको कॉस्ट अगर पर वीक दिया है तो यू हैव टू मल्टीप्लाई इट बाय वीक्स. नाउ हाउ मेनी वीक्स आर देयर? दैट यू विल फाइंड आउट बाय कोलेटिंग टू डेटा. एक डेटा क्या दिया है? वर्किंग डेज टोटल पूरे 300 होंगे and per week the working days would be 6. So how many working weeks you will have? Working weeks are 300 days divided by 6 days in a week, so it comes to 50 weeks. So my maintenance cost is 500 per week, so it will be 500 per week into 50 weeks. Correct. So एक ये cost है 2,500 into 12. 12 2s are 24, 24 and 6 30. Next ये cost है 500 into 50, which is 5 5 are 25. Then next, 3 operators control the operation of entire battery of 6 machines. तो सारे 6 machines को चलाने के लिए you require 3 operators. Now the wage rate given is on an average per worker. How much you give? 450 per week. Plus 40% is the perquisites that you are giving, which is the fringe benefits. So now see, operator wages is generally considered as variable. So I'm putting it here. Again, as I said, इस question में fixed variable नहीं पूछा है. जहाँ पे पूछा रहेगा, they will tell you what is fixed, what is variable. Here nothing is given, but generally power cost, operators cost, these are variable. Now 3 operators, each one is paid 450 per week. So please see the calculation. There are 3 workers. 450 is their salary per week, but I want per annum. So multiplied by again 50 weeks. But these 6 workers are controlling 6 machines and I want cost of 1 machine. So I'll divide this by 6 machines so that I will get cost of 1 machine, right? Now this working will give me the basic wages of the workers. But what is important is I'm also giving them 40% as the fringe benefits. So firstly, 3 workers divided by 6 machines into 450 into 50 weeks, and this whole amount plus 40%. Correct? So how much I am getting? Please confirm. Is it 15750? Right? Perfect. Please solve parallel to me so that you are also understanding what is going on. And then they say your overheads for this department works out to rupees 60,000. Now remember, this is my departmental overhead. So this is for this entire department. Now in the last year, it was 60,000. In this year, I'm expecting because of inflation, it will increase by 12.5. Understand this. So now departmental overheads. How much it is? 60,000 was last year plus 12.5% is inflation. However, this is for the entire department. I want it for 1 machine. So again, I will divide it by 6 machines. So this will give me my overheads cost of 1 machine. How much it is? The battery is draining. Students, give me 2 minutes. I'll have to work out something. There is a power failure in our society. 1 second. Give me some time. Till then, I'll just complete this. I'll work out some option for electricity backup. Please complete this entire working. So I hope you all have completed these workings. How much is the total overheads of this one machine? Total overheads. So this, I'm informed, is 11,250. And the total overheads I'm informed is 3,70,000. Now divided by 200 hours. So you will get your ORR, which is the machine hour rate. Why it is called as machine hour rate? Because it is calculated per machine hour. Per machine hour. Correct, students? Very good. So you all had already calculated this. Excellent. So this is how, students, we find out ORR for production overheads. And generally, as I said, the base to be used is labor hours or machine hours. You generally get these sums for machine hours, which is called as machine hour rate. Let me take you to the last part of this. That is treatment of under over absorbed overheads. Now, what is this under or absorbed overheads? Let us understand. For this, we go back to accounting. If you remember, I had explained that you have overheads account. So production overheads control account. Now in this, on the debit side, what will happen? Every month, as you go on paying these expenses, you pass this entry to bank, where you get the amount of overheads which is incurred, which is also actual overheads. And every month, as you do production, you keep on charging these overheads to your product, for which the account head is WIP. So the journal entry that is passed and the postings which are done is, you will study this in detail in the cost accounting topic, that every month you keep on paying the overheads. So you post it by saying to bank, the amount which is here is the amount of overheads incurred, that is the actual overheads. And every month as you are doing production, you have to charge it to product. So the account head is work in progress. So this is the overheads charged to product. Now this will happen throughout the year. So as you go on doing both things, one side you are paying, you are passing the entry, one side you are charging, that is costing, you are passing the entry. Now we are at the end of the year. So again, right now, once this March closes, we start closing our books. We start passing all the entries and completing all the postings. So at the end of the year, I get this figure. Okay, on the debit side, the total is 4,50,000, which represents overheads incurred. On the credit side, the total is rupees 6 lakhs, not 6 lakhs. Let us say 3,60,000, which represents overhead charge. So I have, at the end of the year, when I'm finalizing my books, closing my books after 31st March, I find that the debit total, which is of actual overheads, is 4,50,000, whereas the credit total is 3,60,000. Now I have to close this account, as we do for all ledger accounts at the end of the year. Now, please understand what category of account this is. This is a nominal account. Why it is a nominal account? Because it is an expense account, and expenses and revenue accounts are nominal accounts. So this is my nominal account. Now, since it is a nominal account, it is not representing any stock. It is not a real account like material or like finished goods where there should be a stock. It is a nominal account. Now, what we do of this difference here on the credit side, which is of 90,000, I will have to transfer this somewhere. I will have to post it somewhere. Now, where will I post it? This is called as treatment. So what do you mean by treatment? Treatment is this 90,000 difference. You have to post it somewhere. Where you will post it, how you will adjust this 90,000, that is called as treatment. Now, what we are studying, treatment of either under absorbed overheads or over absorbed overheads. What is this under or over? Under or over means, in this case, You paid 450, but how much you charge? Only 360. So this 90,000 represents under absorption. Under means you charged less. You paid more, you charge less. So this is under absorption. However, had it been the other way around, here, let us say this is 360 and let us say this amount is not 450, it was only 3 lakhs, for example. It means you paid 3 lakhs, but you charged more. Now, in this case, here you would have got the difference of 60,000, then it would have been called as over absorbed overheads. So if you are charging more and paying less, it is over absorbed. If you are paying more, charging less, it is under absorbed. I hope you got the meaning of these terms. Now, in this example, it is under absorption. Now, what to do the treatment? So what we are studying now is treatment of under absorbed overheads or over absorbed production overheads. Now what to do? So this what I explained in accounting format. Now we are going to do it in the solving format, what is given in the exam sums. So let me take you to the exam sums. The best part of this chapter is all questions are repetitive. You will find same type of questions with different figure. So again, I'm taking slightly bigger question, this one. So what it is saying, a company had estimated its overhead charging rate as rupees 6 per machine hour. So how like right now we calculated our machine hour rate as 185. This company, when it calculated its charging rate, the overhead charging rate was 6 per machine hour. Now all this was at the start of the year. Now, during the year, what has happened? The actual overheads that the company has incurred comes to 395, and the hours for which the company worked has come to 70,000 machine hours. Now, firstly, this data will help me find out whether there is under absorption or whether there is over absorption. So, my first step is finding out the under or over absorption amount. Just to inform you, our topic left is only of 10 minutes. I've tried to make some parallel battery arrangement. So my mobile and my laptop both are working on some external battery resource. I just pray to God that I'm able to get more 10 minutes. If by chance it ends before 10 minutes, unfortunately, we'll not be able to do anything, but I've made a parallel battery source. So I'm sure we'll complete the entire topic and will not miss out on anything. Okay. So now from this data, I have to find out how much is my under or over absorbed overheads. Now, how do we find out? Now, if you would have prepared account, you could have got it easily the difference like this. But we are not preparing account. We are solving it as a question. So the format is you find out the under or absorbed amount by this formula. What is the formula? Production overheads absorbed minus production overheads incurred. Now, how will you absorb? You have find out the ORR, which is given in the question, multiplied by the actual machine hours. So this is how you absorb overheads. Now, what was the ORR given? It is 6 per machine hour. And how many hours you have worked in this year? It is 70,000. So 70,000 is the hours multiplied by 6 per hour is the rate minus. How much is your actual overheads? My actual overheads are 3,95,000. So actual overheads incurred is 395. Now this comes to rupees 4,20,000, 7 6 are 42 minus 95. So you have 25,000 positive figure. Positive means it is over absorption. So this figure represents my over absorbed production overheads. Had this been a negative figure, it would have been under absorbed. Now, logically also you can understand if my absorbed amount is more than my incurred amount, I already explained, it is over absorption. If my incurred amount is more than my absorbed amount, it is under absorption. So in this format, if here you are getting a negative figure, you will call it as under absorbed. But since I'm getting a positive figure, I'm calling it as over absorbed. Now, once I have found out what is the amount of under or over absorbed, now I have to do the treatment. So now I'm doing treatment of over absorbed production overheads. What is the treatment? Theory says find out how much is the abnormal and the normal amount of this under or absorption. Now, how do I find out this? You will find it out from the question itself. Now, further, what the question says, the cost record showed the following units. WIP closing balance is 8,000 units. Finished goods closing balance is 10,000 units. Units sold is 3,500. It is estimated that 50% of difference is due to abnormal reasons. So how much difference I've got? I've got 25,000, and they are saying 50% of this difference is due to abnormal reasons. So obviously, balance 50 is normal. So they may give any percentage of this. They may say 60-40, they may say 70-30. So as per the question's information, I get to know that out of this under or absorbed difference, which is 25,000, 50% represents abnormal. And the rule in costing is whatever is abnormal, charge it to cost P and L account. So if I have to explain it over here, let us say here also, we assume the same proportion 50-50. So out of this 50%, that is 45,000, your entry will be by cost P&L. Because whatever is abnormal has to be transferred to cost P&L. So whatever is abnormal, what have I written? Charge it to cost P&L. But whatever is normal, what does costing says for normal? You should always charge to products. How I charge to product? There is a small working. So I will be charging the normal portion to the products. How? Small working. What is this working? First is product accounts. Next is ratio. Third is amount. Now this 12,500, I have to charge to products. Now what are my product accounts? First account is the work in progress, which we in short call as the WIP. Second is the finished goods. In short, you may call it as FG. Third is the cost of sales. You may call it as the COS. Now, these ledger accounts we study in detail when you go to the cost accounting chapter. Now, I need to charge this difference, which is this difference, the normal portion, to the product accounts. And there are three product accounts. Now, since there are three product accounts, I'll have to divide this amount of 12,500 using some ratio. What is the ratio? The ratio is of the closing units of WIP, closing finished goods units, and the units sold. Now, how many units of WIP are given? They are saying you have 8,000 units, but since they are WIP, they are not finished, they are semi-finished. So how much portion of it is complete? 60% portion of it is complete. So 8,000 units, which are 60% complete, I get that roughly my WIP units, which is equivalent to finished goods, is 4,800. So 8,000 units of WIP partially completed is equivalent to 4,800 fully completed units. Similarly, how much is my fully completed units? That is finished goods. It is 10,000. So this is 10,000 units. And how much is my unit sold? It is 35,200. So 35,200 is my unit sold. Now, these units becomes my ratio. 4,800, 10,000, 35,200. This is now the ratio in which I will divide 12,500. So how much it comes to? 4,800, 40,000, 50,000. So this is to this is to this is the ratio. Tell me, students, the amount that I'm getting for each of these accounts. So divide 12,500 in the ratio of 4,800 is to 10,000 is to 35,200. So how much it is, students? Okay, 1200, 2500, 8800. So it is 1200, 2500, 8800. So students, this is the whole working. So you first find out the under or absorption, then you find out the treatment. The treatment is dividing the under or absorption amount into the abnormal and the normal portion. Whatever is abnormal portion, it will always be transferred to P&L. Whatever is the normal portion will always be charged to the product. The product accounts would be generally 3. So take the ratio of these accounts. So here units is the ratio, and then this is the amount which you have charged. If I have to explain it in terms of this particular example, then my entries would be by WIP, by finished goods, by COS account. So 45,000, which is 50%, has gone to P&L, and balance 45,000 will be divided between these 3 accounts in this ratio, whatever ratio you are getting. So this is how you do treatment of under over absorption. Dharani is asking, sir, is the ratio for dividing the normal portion will be closing WIP, closing finished goods, and units sold? Perfect, Dharani. Yes, that will be the case always. You will take closing WIP, closing finished goods, and units sold as the ratio. Now, what may happen is, in this example, as you saw, the ratio is of units. Maybe in some other example, the ratio would be of value. Value means they would be giving you the amount for these things. That is the amount of closing WIP, amount of closing finished goods, and the cost of goods sold. I'm trying to unmute you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Rohan. Please tell me.
Sir, whether this under over absorption happens only in case of production overhead or in case of all the 3 overheads?
See, it may happen in case of all the 3 overheads, but as we saw, in case of administration, there is a possibility that since administration may not be charged to the product itself because we have the option of transferring it to P&L or dividing between production and selling. Hence, we normally do not find out the difference for administration overheads. Selling overheads, there is a less chance because selling overheads are generally charged completely to sales. So that is why the major possibility of there being this difference will be with production overheads only. And that is why even in our exam sum, they give us the production overheads data. Fine?
Okay, sir.
Yes, students. So this is the complete chapter of overheads. So the 4 important practical parts are primary, secondary, machinery rate, and treatment of under over absorption. Nagar Thana is asking, sir, how come 1200? Please tell me once again. Bhumika, I have not divided 45,000 in any ratio. That is an example because when I explained you, I had taken the example of 90,000 difference. So 50,000 comes to 45,000, balance 50,000 comes to 45,000. This balance 45,000 will be divided in the ratio of WIP, FGCOS, whatever ratio is given in the question. So here, since this was my oral example, there is no ratio I have taken. Nagarthana, you have asked me how 1200 has come. Please better divide your 12,500 Nagarthana in the ratio of the units. When you divided this 12,500 in this ratio, you will get 1200, 2500 and 8,800. Right? So I hope students have understood the entire thing. Now, as I was explaining, in some question, they may give you the units, like here you are given closing units of WIP, closing units of finished goods, and also units sold. In some other sum, they will directly give you the values. Like here, you are given the overheads, fine. That is the difference between uh, overheads charge and overheads incurred. And that value, the ratio which you want for these three products, they are directly giving you the value. So the second possibility is for ratio, they will give you the value. So where they have given you the value, you will take value as the ratio. Like here in this next example, if they give you value, you directly take the value as the ratio. So for the purpose of solving, if units are given, just remember one thing: for WIP, you will first multiply the WIP unit by the percentage completion given. And this units, which is called as the equivalent units, that is what you take. So for WIP, find out the equivalent units, take these units as the ratio. And if in the question they have directly given you the values of WIP, finished goods, and cost of goods sold, take the values. So students, we have completed the entire chapter, and I'm thankful that my battery is still working. So nothing from my end or your end is missed out in this chapter. So I hope everything is understood by all students. Any further questions you all have on this topic? I've already posted answers for the overhead chapter for few sums. Remaining sums also, I'm getting it solved. Once I get it solved, I will also post the answer so that you can practice and you can cross-check. So my side, the chapter is done. Dharni, these questions, this entire sheet was already posted after the end of the first session. So this sheet, which you can see, the printed sheet is already posted. Yesterday night, I also posted the answers for a few of these questions. I'm just making my staff solve the questions, and as he's solving, I'm posting it on the portal. So yesterday I posted few answers. For the next 2 days, I'll post further more answers. Fine. So students, thank you very much. We have completed the topic. I am unfortunately closing the session because my mobile is now totally drained and the net connection may switch off anytime. But we have completed it. Please revise it. Go to your module, solve all the questions first. In case you have any doubts, please put it across. We will answer it in the next lecture. But please practice. This is the most simple and scoring topic. Yes, one or two sums here and there, you may have a challenge in understanding the language, but that is a question, that is a challenge of language that will be overcome with more practice. So please keep solving and please be in touch with the subject. So with this, I close the session. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Sir, we can close the session, sir. Yes, sir. My battery is now completely dead. So anytime it will close down automatically. Thank you, sir. I've completed the topic. Thank you.